Swipe if you get scared easy, because I have another paranormal submission that was sent to me via email and we're gonna sit down and read it right now. What got me about this email in particular is the subject. It read, "Please read this. I don't know who else to tell." Well, let's get to reading. Hi Casey, I've been debating on sending this to you for probably 3 or 4 months. I follow you religiously on TikTok and I get really excited every time that you post one of your send me your stories. Every time I open up my drafts, but then I chicken out. So I'm just gonna type this out and hit send before I talk myself out of it again. You can call me Hannah in the video. I would really like to stay anonymous. I'm from Moosup, Connecticut. If I say that wrong, please correct me. If you've never heard of it, don't feel bad. Most people haven't. It's a little village tucked into an eastern part of the state. Think old mill town, lots of woods, the kind of place where everybody knows whose car is in the driveway. And that part matters, I promise. I live alone. I bought my house about 1.5 years ago. First place that I ever had that was just mine, so I was super obsessed with it. Little 2-bedroom off of a back road, big yard, woods that go on forever behind the property line. The previous owner was an older woman who passed away in the home. Her family sold it as is. I didn't care, and I got it under asking, so I felt like I hit the lottery, because you know how expensive buying houses is these days. The first few months were completely normal, literally nothing out of the usual. But then I started noticing my dog. I have a shepherd mix named Rue, sweetest thing on earth, never barked at anything, not even the mailman, not thunder, nothing. But around late September, he started doing this thing where he would sit at the bottom of the stairs and he would just stare up. Not bark, not whine, just stare. Sometimes it would be for 20 minutes. It wasn't something that was brief. I would call him and he wouldn't move. And he's always been so obedient and would run right to me when I say his name. But this time he just wouldn't. He just tilted his head like he was listening to something. I told myself there's got to be mice in the attic. You know, he can hear better than me. There's something in these old walls that he hears that I just can't. I even paid a guy to come check. Nothing. No droppings, no nests, no chew marks. He said the attic was cleaner than most of the attics he sees, especially for a home this old. Then the smell started. Only in the guest bedroom. Only at night, and only sometimes. It smelled like pennies and wet laundry. I would open up the door in the morning and it would be gone. I burned candles. I bought one of those plug-in things that goes off every once in a while. I convinced myself that it was one of the vents. In November, I woke up around 3 a.m. because Rue was growling, low in his chest. It was deep, the kind of growl I didn't even know it was possible for him to make. He was standing at the foot of my bed facing the hallway. My bedroom door was open, which was normal. I always sleep with it open. Pause. Girl, close that damn door. We'll talk about that later. Sleep with it open so he can get out to his water bowl. I looked down the hallway. The guest bedroom door, which I keep closed, was also open. And there was a woman, clear as day, standing in the doorway. I want to be so clear about this because I've replayed it 1,000 times. She was not see-through. She was not glowing. She was not floating. She looked like a person, like a regular, real person. Older, maybe 70s, wearing a nightgown, gray hair down past her shoulders. She was just standing there with her hands at her sides, looking at me. I didn't know how to read her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was just looking. I couldn't move though. I couldn't scream. I've heard people say that, and I always thought that was dramatic, but I swear to you, my body would not respond to me no matter how many times I kept telling myself to move. I could feel my hands shaking. I could see that she was taking a step in the hallway, one step toward my room. I also could see my phone lighting up on the nightstand out of the corner of my eye. Not a notification sound, just the screen turning on. Finally, I was able to move my neck, and when I looked back, she was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat there with every light on until the sun came up. The next morning, I told myself I dreamed it. I'm a rational person. I really am. I Googled sleep paralysis, which I actually see you talking about a lot on your page, which is one of the things that really motivated me to send you this message. Interesting seeing how many people who have experienced this also have experienced paranormal situations. I tried to make it make sense in my head, and I moved on until a few weeks later. I was going through a box of paperwork the previous owner's family left in the basement. There was property records, old tax stuff. They told me I could toss whatever I wanted. In the bottom of a box, I found this small photo album, and I flipped through it because honestly, I'm nosy. There was a picture of her, the woman, identical, the same face, the same long gray hair. She was standing in what I now know is my guest bedroom, wearing the nightgown. Somebody had written on the back of the photo in pen, and it said, "Mom, the night before." I don't know what the night before what meant. I do not want to know. I've not slept in that room since. Yes, I still live there. I keep that door closed and I put a chair in front of it, which I know sounds insane, but I sleep better knowing it's there. Rue still sits at the bottom of the stairs sometimes. He still stares. And no, I'm not moving, which also really made me think of your page, because people think you're crazy when you say that your parents still live in the house that is haunted where you had so many crazy experiences. I definitely applaud you for trying to get to the bottom of it. I kind of want to start the same sort of journey in this house. I want to know why I saw her. Why is she there? And truthfully, I can't afford to move. I just needed to tell somebody who wouldn't look at me like I'm crazy. If you use this, please don't say my real name. Just Hannah from Moose Up is fine. Thank you for reading this. I feel a little lighter just typing it out. Hannah. Few thoughts when I read this. And first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and trusting me to share it on my page. I want to say that I think everybody kind of thinks that sometimes, they're like, why wouldn't somebody move? Why wouldn't somebody move? And the thing is, people don't realize, like, you could live in a brand new house, the property could be haunted. We naturally live in a space where there just are spirits. And especially for people who are intuitive and empathic, I genuinely believe that energy is going to follow them wherever they go. If you guys follow me, you know that's something that has happened to me my entire life. I also really understand you wanting to know the why. That is exactly why I continue to dig and dig and dig and dig about my parents' house and property. I don't know why I have this internal instinct to solve something, figure something out, but I just do. I think it's very important to note that you didn't feel malice when you saw her. I think seeing anything spiritually can be scary because it feels abnormal, but not every spirit is menacing or is evil or is bad. And I honestly think that a lot of times the kinder spirits are the ones that kind of give you the heavier feeling of wanting to figure something out, of wanting to know, because it feels like there's something unfinished, something they want you to know. Definitely respect that you're staying and that you're wanting to know more things. I'll message you, sending you the links to some of those sites that have helped me out, and I wish you luck in your journey. Thank you again so much for sharing. If you guys want to send your own personal experience to me, the email located in my bio of this page is where you can send your story for a chance for me to be able to read it on here. You can choose to say who you are. You can choose to stay anonymous, whatever is more comfortable for you. And if you're new here and you want to hear more scary stories, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow. You guys let me know in the comments what you thought about Hannah's experience. What are your opinions? Have you ever experienced something similar? As always, thank you for watching. Love you, bye.
Welcome back to another episode of Tea After Midnight. Just a little series where we have some tea to keep it nice and classy, but I also tell you scary stories. So with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachian story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story was sent to me by Anonymous. Hi Savannah, before I start this email, I would like to remain anonymous. I've seen your stories and debated for a few weeks to submit my own. This story still gives me chills every time I think about it. This happened over 8 years ago, and I was 12 at the time this happened. My family and I were visiting a cabin in Connecticut, up in the Appalachian Mountains. I don't remember the exact town, but it was about an hour drive from the town to the cabin we were staying in. We had rented it out from the owners for about 2 weeks. My sister was 8 at the time, and she's told me that she has no recollection of this trip at all, but my parents have a very strong memory of it. We got to the cabin and unpacked in our rooms. I had my own room, which overlooked the woods. During the daytime, it was very gorgeous. There was a lot of wildlife that we had seen on our way up. I had always been very animal obsessed when I was young, so as soon as I was done unpacking, I begged my mom to let me go outside. She was a bit reluctant, but said yes nevertheless. Once I grabbed my jacket and some baby carrots, yes, I literally brought baby carrots to feed the animals, I went outside. I walked towards the woods, and since it was still bright outside, I was very excited, as I had always loved hiking. That excitement quickly changed, because as soon as I stepped into that woods, I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know why I felt so uneasy. My whole demeanor had changed, and suddenly, I didn't want to be outside anymore. There was a house a few minutes above us. Those neighbors had kids around my age. As I walked, I heard a yell from behind me and nearly had a heart attack. Once I turned, though, both of the kids came running to me. We introduced ourselves, and for privacy reasons, they will just be named Jack and Josh. These are not their actual names. As soon as they came, I felt 100 times better. We had walked for around 10 minutes before it started getting really dark outside. I told the boys that I should probably be getting back, but they ignored me. I repeated myself again, but no answer. That's when that uneasy feeling crept back in. I continued walking as I was too scared to walk back alone, and as a kid, I had no fear of strangers, so this was really odd for me to feel like this. After a few more minutes of walking, it had gotten really dark, really quickly. I couldn't see the cabin anymore, and that's when the panic really set in. The two boys suddenly stopped walking, and when I looked back at both of their heads, they both looked in the same direction at the same time, in such an uncanny way. I looked to where they were, and what I saw absolutely haunts me. I saw a campsite that had been torn down, and beside one of the disheveled tents was a large, hunched-over figure. Its spine looked human, but it had fur on its shoulders. My body completely froze, and when I looked back at Jack and Josh, they were booking it. I screamed and ran, and when I looked behind me, I saw the thing standing exactly where I had been, just staring at me. It had to at least be 6 foot tall and looked so skinny and deformed that I felt physically sick. I ran for what seemed like hours, and when I made it back to the cabin, my parents were outside calling my name. When I saw them, I screamed for my mom and started sobbing, trying to explain what I had saw. They brought me inside and talked to me about going outside alone. They probably thought I was crazy by what I was explaining, but when I mentioned Jack and Josh, the neighbors' kids, my parents looked horrified. Apparently, they had spoken to a shop owner in town, and he told them that a couple that lived next door to our cabin had 2 boys. They had disappeared in the woods for weeks, and when the police found their bodies, there were huge claw marks everywhere. They didn't tell me that story until I was around 16. The next day in the cabin, I refused to leave the cabin at all. My parents had to go into town to get batteries and a few groceries. They left me and my sister and told me to watch her and to not go outside. After about an hour, my sister and I were watching TV on the couch when the power went out. I wasn't worried as this was an old cabin. When I got up to go outside to start the generator, something in my gut told me to stop. So instead of going outside, I went into the kitchen to look out the window, as the side of the house the generator was on was the same as the kitchen. When I looked outside, my heart dropped. The same creature was in the woods. Half of its body was behind a tree, while it looked at the front door where I would have walked out. I made eye contact with it, and I swear it smiled. It was the worst smile I'd ever seen, and I felt like I was going to throw up. I ran back to the living room and grabbed my sister, and we ran upstairs into my room. I locked the door and called my mom, crying, just repeating over and over, "It's here, it followed me, it's here, it followed me." My mom told me to stay on the phone and stay hidden. That hour was the worst and longest hour of my life. I heard scratching and knocking on my window, which would have been impossible as I was on the 2nd floor. Whatever was outside wanted me to come out with it. My parents got home and ran into the house calling our names. That night we packed our things and called the cabin owner. The owner didn't really sound surprised at all that this had happened. When we got everything in the car and started driving down, I looked outside the window and I saw the 2 boys for a split second. I looked at my sister to see if she was looking, but she was already asleep. When I looked back, they were gone. To this day, I still avoid the woods and refuse to go hiking. I avoid going out at night alone, even in the suburbs. Safe to say this experience left a huge impact on my life, even as an adult. So I honestly don't know which is worse, seeing the creature that you saw, or the 2 boys that were actually apparitions. Either way you look at this, this is horrifying. I really want to know what that creature was that you saw, because honestly, it sounds like whatever that creature was the thing that attacked the 2 boys. But honestly, what freaks me out the most is I guarantee you that creature waited for your parents to leave, and it somehow cut the power, and when you went to go turn it back on, you saw the creature looking at the door, the same door you would have walked out to go make sure the power got cut back on. That absolutely unnerves me beyond belief. Because it knew to watch the front door because that's where you would be coming out of. Absolutely not. But of course, the cherry on top of the cake for me is you guys were both upstairs waiting for your parents to come back after you just experienced this, and you keep hearing tapping and knocking at your window. But you're on the 2nd floor. That part right there freaks me out the most. But I do want to say that I'm so glad you all made it out of there safely and nothing happened. I hate that you guys went through that, but I'm so thankful you made it out of there safe. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them, and they do not have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. You can email me at the email on top of the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I love you so much. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
So a lot has been happening. Most recently, my mom was at home and she calls me and she's like, "You didn't tell me you dropped off Simone." I was like, "But I didn't. We're out and about right now. We're on a mommy-daughter date." And she's like, "I just walked past her room and I see her holding the remote up and I hear YouTube." And I'm like, "Simone is in the back seat in her chair. I promise you." I walk in, I work overnights. And so I walk into the house about 7:40 in the morning and I see my mom sitting at the table, the kitchen table. She's like, 3 o'clock this morning. I get up and I go to the bathroom and I see the side door opening and I see you. And so I just thought you got off work early. I walk into the bathroom, close the door, and you walk past, you say, "Hey, Mom." I said, "Hey, baby," and you proceed to go to your room. I said, "Oh." She was like, "But after I didn't see you walking out your room to come and get in the shower, I knocked on the door." And I'm like, "Hey, hello?" And nothing. She's like, "Your door was locked." She's like, "I went to go grab your key and I went to unlock your room door and you not in there." So my mom prays over the house because obviously it's a lot of mimicking going on. And so she's like, "All right." And my daughter has also been coming out of her room a lot more often, asking if I called her name or saying that she heard me or my mom call her name. And I'm like, "Nope. Remember what I tell you? Remember I told you to just come out here and ask, did you call me, instead of yelling out yes." Simone is very gifted and she is way more gifted than I was at her age. And we're out at Chuck E. Cheese and there's this little girl and she's like glued to Simone. She won't leave Simone's side and she's following Simone everywhere, just wants to be with her. And so whoever this person is that she was with, the parent or whoever, guardian, came and grabbed her, but they did so in such an aggressive way. And Simone looked and she looked at me and she was like, "They're not nice to her." And I was like, "Well, how do you know that? Like, why do you say that? Did they say something?" And she was like, "No, I saw it." She's like, he hit her. And all I can think of is she wouldn't know that unless she's getting flashes of images in her head. And I was just like, this is gonna be a bumpy ride. The next day we're at the mall and Simone, she loves saying hello to people. She has a huge personality. She's very outgoing. And so she's like, "Good morning. Hello." And this woman, Simone said hello to this woman. And the woman looked her up and down like in the angriest way. Like she just looked at my child and the way she looked at her had me kind of like So I told Simone, I said, "Baby, you can't speak to everyone. Not everyone is going to speak to you and not everyone is happy with themselves." And she looked me dead in my face and she told me she's just sad about her daughter. Her daughter died. And I got quiet. And I asked her and I said, how do you know that? Did you get a flash?" And she was like, "Her daughter's walking with her. She's really, really sad." Y'all, I'm worried about my baby because I feel like she can feel too much. She feels way too much. She can feel when somebody, now other things I can understand her feeling. When somebody don't mess with you, I love that she can feel that. But feeling the emotion of other people and the things that other people are going through, I know that is very hard for her because it's still hard for me as an adult.
The person that sent me the story called it the monkey. What? I'm intrigued. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. I've been debating on sending the story to you or not, but I think I'm finally ready to tell it. This takes place when I was 5 or 6. I also want to start by saying that the house I grew up in was built in the 1850s by my Native American ancestors, so I'm not sure if that plays into my experience. Probably. I was dead asleep one night when I woke up out of nowhere. It had to be around 2 to 4 a.m. from mine and my brother's bedroom. I shared a room with my brother and we slept in a bunk bed. Immediately outside of our room was the kitchen, and that's where I saw it. On top of the Lazy Susan on our kitchen table is only what I can describe as the head of a monkey, or what my child's brain could make into a monkey. It was smiling at me, mouth closed, grinning ear to ear, and its eyes were pitch black, no whites whatsoever. The closest thing I can compare this to is the monkey from Aladdin, but the size of a basketball and only its head. What fit it? Was it wearing a hat like in Aladdin? It's Abu, right? Abu. What felt like for hours, I was pulling the covers over my head, slowly peeking out, and it didn't move once. I remember I wrote on a wall 4 lines in green crayon to tell myself, if this is in here in the morning, then this is actually real. Oh, you wrote on the wall so that you could wake up in the morning and be like, these lines are here. I wrote that. This shit actually happened. That was actually very smart, especially at 5 years old. Every thought crossed my mind. My mom looking for something to wear to work. Maybe she placed a piece of clothing down weirdly. There was no denying what I was looking at. By some miraculous amount of courage, I slowly crept out of my bed and up the ladder into the bunk bed where my brother was fast asleep, never taking my eyes off of whatever that was. That's when it blinked at me. The slowest blink ever. That sent the coldest chill up my spine. I literally just got chills right now. I rushed up and tried everything to wake my brother up. He was the heaviest sleeper. I shook, hit, and even tried to bite his ear. He moved around a bit, but never woke up completely. I somehow managed to drift off back to sleep, and the next thing I know, my dad is waking us up and asking, hey, what are you doing sleeping up there? Without saying anything, I rushed down, pulled the covers off my bed, and seen the 4 green lines that I had drew the night before. I instantly broke down to my dad, would not go in the kitchen or even look in that direction. Of course, I was met with, it's just a dream. It was just your imagination. I know it seemed real, but it wasn't. But I know what I saw. I'm 33 now, and I still remember it perfectly. So fast forward about 20-something years. I'm 28 years old, and my dad calls me as I'm almost done getting ready to go out drinking for the night. We were talking about my grandfather, who was in the early stages of dementia, and he says to me, oh yeah, your grandpa wanted me to call you earlier because he told me there was a monkey in his room on top of his dresser, smiling at him, telling him to call Becca. Oh my God, I have so many chills. My heart literally stopped for a second. Me too. I said, Dad, do you not remember that happening when I was a child? He said he faintly remembered, but didn't put the 2 things together. He's a skeptic. Something in my gut was telling me not to go out that night, so I didn't. I called off my plans and I stayed home. I stopped drinking shortly after that, and I'm coming up on 5 years sober. Congratulations! Good for you. I have no idea what would have happened if I went out that night, but I knew in my intuition that I would have gotten hurt or worse. I also have no idea what that monkey could even be, or even if the 2 instances are associated, but it's something that will follow me for the rest of my life. Feel free to tag me. You can definitely mention me if you feel like sharing. The story is 100% true, and I've only told it to a few people. It's Blair Witch Becca. I'm going to tag them below on TikTok. If you're not on TikTok, go to their TikTok. This story literally gave me so many chills. What do we think that monkey was? Part of a little tiny part of me wants to say potentially it's a guide, a spirit guide of theirs that's in the form of a monkey head. Maybe it was a monkey head because that's something as a kid you would feel better about, even though they did not feel better about it at all. And I wouldn't have either. A monkey just and then blinking. The slow blink. I mean, slow blinks for cats means that they love you. Maybe slow blinks for weird monkey entities also means they love you and it's okay. And then it did appear to your grandpa, which is so wild, which makes me think it's connected to the family somehow. I'm honestly really not sure. I haven't heard of anyone seeing a monkey head. Does anyone know if there's any kind of cryptid or entity or being or something that is literally the head of a monkey like that? Or do we think that it was showing up as that? Or do we think what do you guys think? I need to know. Please let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for sharing your story. That was scary.
I'm from Slovenia, so if my English is a little off, you know why. But let me get to the story. This story is mainly about my mum. Her name is Belkisa, which becomes important later in the story. In 2014, my family decided we were going on vacation to Egypt. It was me, my mum, my stepdad, and his son. We went there for about a week. The main thing we were excited about was visiting the Valley of the Kings and Queens, which I was obsessed with as a kid and super excited for. The first few days in Egypt, we just enjoyed ourselves, sunbathing, swimming, snorkeling, relaxing. Finally, the day came when we travelled to Luxor. The trip wasn't easy, but it was long and exhausting, and we went by bus, which was organised for all different hotel guests. Our hotel was the last stop, so we boarded the bus last. When we arrived, the whole day was organised, so you could see a lot of things in one trip. We saw how papyrus was made, rode camels, we had crazy jeep rides in the desert, saw local food being prepared, and then the last stop was the Valley of the Kings. When we got there, a lot of attention was on my stepdad because he'd recently gotten a tattoo in Egypt on his arm with my mum's name written in Arabic. So the locals would read it out loud and call it out. They didn't really say it perfectly, but it was similar. They would yell, Belkis. Apparently in Arabic, they couldn't add the A or it becomes silent or something like that. I don't really know. Our tour guide asked who was named Belkis, and my mum just laughed and said it was her. The guide said, "Oh, how interesting. Did you hear about the Queen of Sheba? Her name was Belkis." He then explained she was actually a very important historical figure mentioned in the Bible, Ethiopian legends, and a lot of Arabic historical stories. We thought it was interesting, but moved on and we continued our tour of the valley. When the tour was over, it was time to go back to the hotel. Like I said, our hotel was the last stop, so we got back really late into the night. As the bus kept getting emptier, we could finally pick our seats and relax across two seats. My mum was sitting quite far in the back, my stepdad in the front, and me and my stepbrother in the middle. There were only a couple of people left on the bus at that point, and I distinctly remember my mum getting up from her seat and squeezing in next to me. I was annoyed because I wanted space to sleep. I was really exhausted, but she kept insisting that we sit together, so I just let it go and I fell asleep next to her. We spent a couple more days in Egypt, and then we went back home to Slovenia. We were all still talking about the trip, how great and fun it was. My mum agreed, but she'd been quite quiet and in her head since that day. Life went on, and one day, out of the blue, my mum asked if we could talk. She was very serious. I thought I was in trouble or something. She sat me down and said, "This is going to sound really weird, but I need you to listen to me." I was kind of freaked out. It took her a while, but she started telling me. She said, "Do you remember when we were in the Valley of the Kings?" I said, "Yeah. What's this about?" She continued, "Do you remember when we were on the bus and I came to sit next to you?" "Yeah." She said she was sitting in the back of the bus, almost asleep, when she heard a whisper right behind her. "Belkis."
Oh.
At first she thought she was dreaming, or half asleep because the whole day had been exhausting and the bus was dark and quiet. She opened her eyes straight away, turned around thinking the tour guide was joking or someone was behind her and had said something, but there was no one there, just empty seats. She closed her eyes again, trying to ignore it, and fell back asleep. But then she heard it again. This time, it didn't feel like something mixed with sleep or imagination. It was clear, close, right behind her ear. Belkis. She opened her eyes again, fully awake, and turned around properly, but there's still nothing. She got up from her seat and sat next to me. I was shocked and I was creeped out, and I asked if she was okay now. She looked at me and said, "Tara, it followed me back home." The moment she said those words, something happened. My mum suddenly looked down at her foot, and her expression completely changed. She looked terrified. She told me that something was pulling on her toe. Then I could see it myself. I got goosebumps and I started panicking. My mum had tears forming in her eyes and kept saying that something was grabbing her toe and pulling on it. The weirdest part was I could see her toe moving. It went on for about a minute before it stopped. We sat there, staring at each other, completely confused. Neither of us knew what to think or do. My mum eventually told my stepdad. He's a skeptic, so he laughed it off. But after that, strange things happened around the house. Whenever me and my mum closed a door, it would open by itself, every single time. We'd actually watched the handle move down of a door if someone pressed it and the door opened from the other side. We never had problems with doors not closing properly, so it was really strange. At first it scared us, but after a while we kind of got used to it. The weird thing is that we never felt it was evil or bad. It was creepy, but it never felt threatening. By this point, 6 months had passed. Everything had become normal. Eid was approaching, so we were busy preparing for the holiday. We were cleaning the house, cooking huge amounts of food, getting presents ready, and preparing for family visits. On the first day of Eid, my mum got up early to make coffee, prepare a quick dessert for the men when they returned home from prayer. She wanted to take a large glass baking dish from the top of our refrigerator. Our fridge was kind of tall. She couldn't properly see what else was up there. She grabbed the dish and started pulling it towards herself. The second she did that, she felt something push her.
Oh.
Not a gentle nudge, pushed her sideways. At that exact moment, the baking dish and several other heavy glass dishes came crashing down from the top of the fridge. Everything shattered on the floor, glass everywhere. My mum just stood there staring. If she hadn't have been pushed out of the way at that exact moment, all of it would have fallen directly onto her head. And this is the weird part of the story. After that day, it was gone.
Oh.
The whispers stopped, the feelings stopped, the doors stopped opening, strange things just stopped, but whatever had been with us for those months was gone. It's weird to say, but my mum kind of missed it. She'd become so used to feeling that something was there with her all the time that it felt strange when it suddenly wasn't anymore. Over the years, I've thought about this story a lot, and I know this might sound crazy, but I've had my own theory. Back in Egypt, everywhere we went, around the Valley of the Kings and Queens, people kept calling my mum Belkis. The tour guide told us about Queen Belkis, the Queen of Sheba, and how important she was in history and legend. I've often wondered if maybe something there heard that name and thought my mum was someone she wasn't. Maybe a spirit? Maybe something that once knew the real Belkis. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I've always wondered if that's why it followed her home. And the thing that makes me think about it even more is that after months of strange activity, the moment it seemingly protected my mum and prevented that accident, it was gone. Completely gone. Almost as if whatever it came to do had finally been done. Lots of love from Slovenia, Tyra.
La Santa Muerte helped me when I didn't even have money for food. This lady says that about 5 years ago, everything was going wrong. She explains that her husband left her for another woman, and around the same time, she ended up losing her job. From one day to another, she became single and jobless and had to take care of her 2 kids. She had no money and she had no idea how she was going to feed her children. Around this time when everything was happening, she said that she was having dreams about La Santa Muerte and she couldn't understand why. One day, she was very desperate. She didn't even have 1 peso and her children were hungry. She didn't know what to do. She sat on her bed and she started crying in silence so that her children wouldn't hear her. That same day when she was cleaning her house, she ends up finding a 50 peso bill underneath the bed. It was folded up and she had no idea how it appeared. Minutes after finding these 50 pesos, she says that her mom knocks on her door and said that she had made a lot of food and she was bringing it over for her and the kids. She obviously felt relieved, but she also thought, what about the next day? How am I gonna feed them tomorrow? She thought that with the 50 pesos, she can go and get something to eat for the next day. But on her way to the grocery store, she had stumbled upon this little store that she had never seen before, and she saw that they had little figurines. When she walks in there, she realizes that the figurine was of La Santa Muerte, and she ends up using the 50 pesos to buy that little figurine and a candle. She ends up bringing it home. She says she puts it in the corner of her room and that she sits down in front of the figurine and the candle. She starts talking to La Santa Muerte and explains to her that she is a single mother with 2 children to take care of, that she's not asking for free money or things like that. She's just asking for a job, and if she could just help her get a job so that she can be in a better situation for her kids. She explains that she didn't promise La Santa Muerte anything, that she was gonna give her anything like that. She was just hoping that she would help her, and at the end she thanked her and just said she really needed any help she can get. The following morning, she gets a phone call from her ex-boss, the one that literally fired her, saying that he really needs her back to work and that he would pay her a week in advance. fans. She obviously accepted without even questioning it because, again, she really needed that job. Ever since that day, things started to get better for her and her kids. She has money, they haven't gone hungry. She says that she's not living like this bougie lifestyle where she has so much money, but she does have a stable amount of money that would hopefully never get her to the point where she was 5 years ago. Her children are healthy and they may not have what they want, but they have what they need. She explains that she knows that a lot of people talk really bad about La Santa Muerte, but that she could only talk about her experience and what she has lived with. Ever since she brought La Santa Muerte into her home, her life has changed for the better. But what do you guys think?
People who work the night shift often have supernatural encounters. Now, there was a story that came out of Arizona. There's this man named Edward. Edward said he got a job right outside of the Navajo reservation at this small gas station. Now, he said his manager, this older Native American man, he told him before he started this job, he said, there's one thing you must know. There is a set of rules that I have when you work night shift here at this gas station. He said the first rule, now this is the most important rule. When it strikes midnight, you must lock the front door and do not unlock it ever until the morning. He said the second rule, if someone comes to that door and they want to come in after midnight, do not let them in. Even if it seems like they need help, even if it seems like someone you know, do not let anybody into the gas station after midnight. And he said, because they aren't really people. He goes, Edward's like, what do you mean? And he said, I can't talk about it, but just make sure you do not let them in. And he said, the third rule is you must keep the lights on all night long. Don't ever let the lights go out. And if the power goes out, you are to turn this lantern on and some of these flashlights, but do not let it get dark in here. And he said, the fourth rule, you must never answer the phone after midnight. He said, even if it continuously rings like someone important is trying to get a hold of you, do not pick up that phone. So Edward was like, okay, at the time he just kind of thought it was ridiculous, but he's like, all right, I'll do it. So he works at this gas station for several months, and he listens to what this man tells him. And he locks the door at night, and he keeps the lights on, and he doesn't let anyone in. Well, this one night, there was a really bad monsoon, and it was raining, and there was lightning and thunder, and it struck midnight on the clock. So he locked the door. At 12:01, he hears a knock at the door. And when he goes to the front door, and he looks out the glass, he sees this woman. She is completely soaked. She's muddy. Her eyes look very wide. She looks in distress and like something is wrong. And she goes, please, please let me in. You have to let me in. And she's, crying and screaming, banging on this window. And he's like, look, I'm sorry, we're closed. Like, I cannot let you in. And she goes, no, please, you don't understand. You have to let me in. And she, banging harder and harder. And he's like, I told you we're closed. Go away. He said, that's when this woman, at the time, you could see her from this light that was outside. It was shining on her. But when she stepped outside of this light, so that's when he noticed her face started to change. She didn't look human anymore. She looked like some kind of monster. And he said she just twisted her head to the side and she took off running. And instantly he got this feeling of dread, like something was wrong. Well, he said all night long, he could hear stuff yelling at him from outside, telling him to open the door. Some of these voices sounded like his family members, friends. And he said all night long, something was harassing him. Well, that freaked him out, but he really needed this job. So he was there for a couple more months. And then he said one night, the worst thing happened. They had a blackout and the power was completely gone. And he said it was completely dark in this gas station. Now he locked the doors and everything, but he remembered what that old man told him. Do not let it get dark in here. So he scrambles to find this lantern and he starts trying to get it lit. And he can hear stuff moving around. And he can see shadows of things running around the gas station. And he can hear this laughter. And he can hear banging sounds coming from outside, like something was trying to get in. Finally, he manages to get this lantern on. But all night long, once again, he could see things running around. He could hear voices calling him, telling him to come out of the light. And the next morning, he was so terrified, he quit this job. And he said that was probably the most terrifying job he'd ever worked, working night shift at a small gas station outside of the Navajo reservation.
Have you ever been scared of what you might see in your rear view mirror at night? Well, this story is about exactly that. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. If you like being cozy while listening to creepy stories, then give me a follow so you never miss a story. I was getting home from work as the sun was starting to set. I figured I'd go run to the store to get a TV dinner because I remembered I didn't have any food. So I started backing up when I saw a light figure in the backup camera. I turned around to see who would be in my driveway, standing behind my car, but no one was there. Whatever, I thought. I'd had a long day. I started backing up again when I saw her, but more clearly now. She was old and thin with a white dress and stringy long gray hair, and she just stood there, her head slowly tilting. Strings of gray hair were obstructing her face. I quickly turned around again, but I couldn't see her out my window. Was she crouching down before I turned? I got out and went around to the back of my car, expecting an old woman to be crouching, but she wasn't there. That's not possible. There's nowhere she could have hidden, and my driveway and front yard is an open space. I would see anyone if they had been there. I was getting really spooked now, but I was also starving, so I figured whoever it was had somehow gone now. I kept my eyes peeled near the back of my car and any areas around it. I got back into my car and no one was there, so I turned my car on, shifted gears to reverse, and looked in the backup cam, bracing myself. There was no one there. I sighed a breath of relief until I looked in the rear view mirror and saw what was in my back seat. An old woman with stringy gray hair staring back at me. I couldn't scream or move, could only stare back. She stared at me with her mouth agape, expressionless. Her gray hair covered most of her eyes. Her skin looked like it was decaying. She had the skin of a decaying corpse. I finally broke out of my fear-induced trance and jumped out of the car. When I looked back, the back seat door was also opening, and a bare, decaying foot stepped out. She got out and took a wobbly, slow step towards me, then abruptly turned around and ran away, sprinting fast into my neighbor's yard until I could no longer see her. I never saw her again, but I did let my neighbors know. As far as I know, no one has ever seen her. I didn't eat dinner that night. I just locked up and kept all the lights on until morning. I always check around my car before I get in now. If you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
My 4th of July surprise. Oh my god, babe, my fiance said breathlessly, you didn't. And with a wry smile, I placed a cardboard box on our kitchen table. I sure did. For a week, I have been giving Zach hints that he'd get a surprise on July 4th, and it was finally time to find out what. The Thunderclap 600. It was the biggest, loudest firework display on the market, and it hadn't been cheap, and I had driven 6 hours down to South Carolina to get it, but Zach loved fireworks, and I was willing to do anything to give him exactly what he deserved. Squealing like a child, Zach gleefully opened the box and placed the mortar on the table. Babe, he said with awe in his eyes, the whole neighborhood will want to see this. You're welcome, baby, I said and kissed his cheek. This will be the best 4th of July we've ever had. God knows we needed it. In truth, this had been our hardest year so far. Zach had started a new job in January and was working late more often, and I began to kind of feel neglected, but he claimed I wasn't supporting him through his career transition, and it soon drove a wedge between us. He even admitted to having a brief, emotional affair with our neighbor at St. John's, and it took months, but I forgave him, and he promised that we'd have a fresh start after the 4th. So I wanted to bring it in with a bang. We had spent the afternoon grilling burgers at our neighbor's barbecue, and even Addison's pining glances at Zach couldn't ruin an otherwise perfect day. As the sun began to set, all of the neighbors gathered in the cul-de-sac to watch the show. Hey babe, Zach said, can you go get the thunderclap? Sure thing, babe, I said, running back inside. When I didn't come back after 20 minutes, Zach went in to check on me, but I was already gone. You know, trust is a hard thing to rebuild, and I'd seen the risque texts from AJ. It turns out Zach's late nights at work had been spent with Addison, far more physical than emotional, and they hadn't even ended. So I'd hid some essentials in the bushes on the hill overlooking the cul-de-sac, stashed my car in my cousin's backyard, and soon I would be long gone. But not yet. I wanted to watch the fireworks. So I watched from the bushes as Zach gave up looking for me and returned to the cul-de-sac with the thunderclap. I watched as he lit the fuse, giving Addison a flirty smile, and then I watched the fuse die out. Zach checking it confusedly, and Addison beside him just like a lost puppy. Then I watched the rolling crimson fireball as all the neighbors just scattered like flies, just as expected. And the last thing I saw as the smoke cleared were charred pieces of Addison and Zach strewn across the cul-de-sac. Before slipping away, I smiled because I realized I had kept my word. This really has been the best 4th of July ever.
I got another true viewer story for you guys. This one is called There's Something Outside the Tent, and it's a long one, so I'm going to dive straight into it. When I was 12 or 13, I was adventurous. So was my family. All 5 of us decided it would be a great weekend to go camping. Tent camping, actually. We rarely did this since we had an RV, but the idea excited us kids with its novelty and promise of something different. I don't remember the exact location of this campground, but I can tell you I've always lived in West Tennessee near the Kentucky border. That's where this happened. We arrived late in the day. My dad had to work first. My sisters and I'll call them H and K, immediately started running around exploring everything we could find. We discovered a creek bed with cool rocks and little fish trapped in shallow pools. We played through the falling leaves. It was around fall, while Dad set up the tent and Mom unpacked our sleeping bags. The sun was already sinking by the time we sat down to eat. Dad quickly cooked burgers for us, and we enjoyed our meals as the temperature dropped. It didn't get super cold, maybe around 50 degrees. Perfect, really. We all lay in the tent watching the last light disappear through the fabric walls. We snuggled up and made ourselves comfortable. Back then, none of us kids had phones, and my parents weren't on theirs either. They wanted to spend their time with us. So it was just dark in the tent. We lay there chatting and laughing, and eventually the conversation died down and we all fell asleep. At some point in the night, when it was pretty cold, I woke up. I really had to pee. I wasn't necessarily scared to get up, but I didn't want to go without my parents. Still, I pushed myself because I really had to. One thing I should mention, this was a campground with designated spots for tents. A lot of the areas were actually raised wooden decks because the ground was uneven. There was also a bathing area with showers and bathrooms. I could see it in the distance, illuminated under a street lamp, as I quietly climbed out of the tent. I'm a guy, so I can just go in the woods. I found a tree nearby and relieved myself. I was still really tired, my eyes barely open when I heard a strange noise. My eyes snapped open. I looked around towards the sound and saw a tall, shadowy figure standing next to the bathrooms. It startled me at first, but I reasoned that if I had to pee, someone else probably did too. As I finished and walked back towards the tent, I noticed the guy was just standing there. That sound I'd heard earlier, I assumed it was the bathroom door shutting. But he was just standing there, facing me, leaves slowly falling from the trees between us. I was pretty unsettled. I hurried back to the tent and zipped it up. Before I climbed back into my sleeping bag, I took one final look. He was gone. This made me uneasy, but I was still exhausted. I snuggled up to my mom, got warm, and eventually fell back asleep. Morning came, and I remember it clearly because before the sun was even up, the crows started going crazy in the trees. They were making all kinds of racket, and it was really pissing me off. I just lay there in the tent quietly, waiting for everyone else to wake up. Eventually they did. My little sister Kay and I immediately ran out and started playing. We explored the creek, ran around, fought with each other. You know what siblings do. My older sister H was around 17 at the time, so she was in that don't talk to me phase. But of course we'd pass by her and do what kids do. Honestly, I don't have much memory of the daytime activities. At one point I brought up the tall, lanky man I'd seen the night before. My younger sister took it very seriously. She was only 7 or 8 years old. But my older sister and my dad quickly made a joke of it. They said it was Slender Man. Then H said she heard a squirrel last night and that she was so scared, sarcastically. So then my dad started calling it Slender Squirrel. It was pretty funny at the time, and we kept teasing my little sister about it. But deep down, I was still unsettled. I just tried to push it out of my mind. Eventually, as it always does, the sun started to set. Everything started calming down. Crickets began chirping, frogs called in the distance, the sounds of birds died off as a single owl hooted somewhere far away. It was quite a peaceful setting and pretty easy to fall asleep to. I nodded off next to my mother once again. Then around probably the same time as the night before, I woke up having to pee. This time I was much more tired. My day had been full of running around and playing. I lay there on my pillow trying to decide if it was worth getting up, but I really had to go. Just as I started to situate myself and get out of my sleeping bag, the loud zipper broke the silence, and suddenly I heard it. Footsteps on the deck our tent was sitting on. Very, very slow footsteps, like someone was trying to be as quiet as possible, but I could feel the vibrations through the wood we were laying on. I sat up slowly to make sure everyone was in our tent, that it wasn't one of my siblings or something. I counted, 5 of us. We were all there. But there was an uninvited guest right outside our tent with only thin fabric separating us. I continued listening as the footsteps slowly made their way around. They started from behind the tent and wrapped around to my left. Now they were at the front of the tent, where the steps of the deck led down to the gravel path. I knew this was a person or something of humanoid distinction. I could hear the heel-toe pattern of what sounded like boots. Eventually they made their way to the steps, their pace quickening. I just sat there and listened helplessly, hoping whoever or whatever this was would just leave. I heard them step down into the gravel and start crunching through the leaves, but instead of continuing straight, I heard them turn left into the woods. Our tent was actually on the edge of the campground, so there was nothing behind us but pure forest. I heard the footsteps disappearing into the distance. Eventually they just stopped. I could hear nothing anymore. Slowly the crickets and the owl in the distance came back into focus. After this unsettling situation, I was obviously pretty scared. There was no way I was falling back to sleep, and I still really had to pee, but I wasn't about to go outside, so I just laid my head back down, eyes wide open, staring at the roof of the tent, trying to listen for any more sounds. Why didn't I wake up my parents, you may ask? I was nervous about it. I thought it might have been my imagination, or they might be mad at me, or things might just get worse, so I left them alone and figured I'd tell them in the morning. I never did sleep the rest of that night. Eventually, I saw morning light start to peek through our tent walls, and I heard those stupid, annoying crows again. Eventually, morning turned to day. As my sisters ran around doing whatever they wanted, I just sat in our camping chair, watching the trees blow. I couldn't stop thinking about those footsteps and how they'd turn left, straight into the forest. Anyway, I was sitting there thinking about the sounds, wondering if maybe it had been my imagination from lack of sleep. I decided I should tell my mom. She'd probably take me more seriously than my dad had. I found her at the campsite and told her I'd heard footsteps last night, that it was pretty scary, that it sounded like someone was on our deck. She said, "Honey, you were probably just dreaming, or it was a squirrel or something. We're completely safe out here. Nobody wants to hurt you. Look at all these other families." At the moment, this made me feel a little better. My mom always makes me feel better. Skip ahead a few hours, and here we are getting ready for bed again. Nothing weird happened during the day. I'm in that familiar spot next to my mom in the cold tent, snuggled up. At this point, I'm extremely tired. The lack of sleep last night and all the activities today had me worked. I was ready to sleep. My family's chatter and giggles turned into silence as I drifted into what I hoped would be a good night's rest. But late in the night, surrounded by my parents snoring, I heard the loudest twig snap I've ever heard. Everything around us just went quiet. It made me dart awake. And as if that wasn't awakening enough, I immediately heard what sounded like stomping footsteps coming down the deck stairs, straight towards the entrance of the tent. Whoever this was moved quicker than last time. They walked around the tent to my side on the left, and I could feel the whole tent shift as they brushed past it. I could literally hear and feel their body touching against the thin wall between us. At this point, I was freaking out. I started to lightly shake my mom, but she was still asleep. I was very timid as a child, so I didn't want to push it too much. And then I heard it. There's a back flap on the tent, and the zipper started opening very, very slowly. At this point, I was panicking. I shook my mom really hard this time, not making any noise, but she woke and sat up. What's happening?" she said. The zipper stopped, just like that. No more noise came from outside. "Mom, there's someone outside the tent," I whispered. "They're trying to get in." "No, there isn't," she said in an annoyed voice. "Go to sleep." "Mom, please wake up, Dad. Please. There is somebody outside the tent. I heard them. I felt them. They are here." At this point, my dad woke up, still groggy from sleeping. I explained to him what was happening. Very quickly and without saying much, he grabbed his flashlight and unzipped the front tent flap. Ignoring the back flap that was halfway open at this point, he shined light around the tent slowly, looked around. Nothing. Nobody. No sign of anyone being there. I was in disbelief. Morning rolled around with those damn crows annoyingly squawking in the distance. This time I was even more annoyed because I'd gotten zero sleep. I spent the rest of the day in a really bad mood, not wanting to talk to anyone, just reading my book, drawing on a piece of paper, not exploring or doing anything a kid should be doing. The next day was the day we were leaving, so my siblings were trying to get the best of it. I won't bore you with what happened throughout the day because nothing really happened, except at one point I saw an old, pale, tall man walking around in the woods, seemingly exploring. I didn't think much of it at the time. And once again, night rolled around. I was genuinely terrified to even lay in the tent again. I just wanted to go home at this point. I made a point to leave the zipper unzipped from when it was unzipped that night, but it got zipped back by someone in the family. As I lay there, not sleeping, minutes felt like hours. I didn't have a phone, so I had absolutely no way to check the time. I just lay there waiting, hoping the man wouldn't come back, hoping the sun would come up faster. I actually waited for those crows, hoping they would start calling. But time passed slowly. I specifically remembered at one point it got extremely cold. I started shivering. I swear I could feel the wind just blowing through the tent fabric. It was unsettling. I could hear leaves smacking into the tent and rustling in the distance, as if something were out there, but I chalked it all up to the wind. I was trying hard to forget what had happened. I was hoping that someone had just been pranking us and had left already. Another hour or so passed, and then I heard it. Footsteps in the gravel outside the deck. This time they were shuffling or dragging, like someone dragging their feet through the gravel. Very slow, very long, and drawn-out steps. I started shaking. Not again, I thought. But the footsteps stopped. I could hear them last right in front of the deck. Silence followed. I sat there waiting. All of a sudden, something sharp poked against the side of the tent, like a stake or a knife, but it didn't poke through. It scared the absolute crap out of me. And then, suddenly, it poked straight through the side of the tent. I mean, this was like a foot from me. It was a knife, like an 8-inch long knife, and it started cutting down the tent wall. I started screaming. My little sister woke up immediately, freaking out and crying. Then my mom. Then my other sister H started screaming, "Dad! Dad!" My mom was shaking my dad awake. We could all see this very obvious item poking through the tent and what looked like a hand pushing down on the roof. I started shuffling and pushing myself away from the wall of the tent, trying to get as far away from possible from whoever or whatever this was. My dad finally woke up and grabbed his pew-pew, but as he was doing it, I was just staring at the hole left in the tent, and I saw a pair of eyes looking through. I swear they were glowing yellow. Obviously, this could have been my childlike imagination. I saw hands start to open the hole in the tent, ripping it further. I started to see a face, a white, pale, wrinkled, disgusting face, no facial hair, just yellow eyes. And I saw crooked teeth smiling at me. I swear to God, this is all real. I remember it so vividly. My dad had the pew-pew and cocked it. The loud noise was followed by the face disappearing. Darkness flowing through that hole. I heard running footsteps across the deck we were on. I felt the whole platform shaking, and then I heard the footsteps in the gravel, quickly pacing, and then into the leaves. My dad got up fast and told us to stay. He opened the tent, fumbling with his zipper. I saw him leave and point his weapon in the direction the visitor had run. My dad is very careful with his weapons, so he didn't pull the trigger. We were still in a campsite with other people around. But he continued, pointing in that direction. He yelled, "I don't see anything." I was holding my mom, and she was holding all of us kids. We were all shaking. It was still freezing, and we were all terrified. My dad poked his head back in the tent and said, "There's nobody there." He got back out and walked around the whole platform, around the tent, and looked everywhere. He couldn't see anything, no knife, no footprints, nothing. He then reached back into the tent and grabbed his cell phone. He dialed 911. About 20 minutes later, a police cruiser showed up, illuminating the woods around us with blue and red lights. The cop got out and started asking my dad questions outside. By this point, my family and I were outside the tent, and we could see other people trying to see what was going on. It was still dark outside. The police then asked my mom some questions, what she saw, what she heard, and then asked me and my siblings the same thing. They said they would do a sweep of the area and give us an update. After this, my dad got back in the tent and just said, "All right, let's try and get some rest. We're safe, guys. We have a long drive ahead of us tomorrow." I don't know how he could simply ask this of us. We were terrified, but we lay there trying to sleep. I stayed wide awake, my eyes just staring at the roof of the tent, waiting for something insane to happen. But thank God it never did. Eventually, as time passed, slowly, I saw sunlight start to filter through the tent fabric, and I heard a sound that made me happier than ever. The crows. The crows began squawking, and I was just so relieved to hear them again. When they crowed, it seemingly meant the nightmare had stopped. We packed up quickly, got everything in the truck, and left without looking back. Thank God nothing more horrible actually happened to us. There's no telling what that man, or whatever that was, would have done if my dad hadn't been armed. To this day, I don't know what it was. If it was a stalker or some random person trying to prank us, or if it was something more sinister. Was it somebody fixated on us? On me? I just didn't know. Anyway, thank you. The submitter of the story wants to remain anonymous, but thank you for this story. Keep sending me those stories and suggestions, guys. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. And keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
A series of spooky stories, except for it's aliens and UFOs. Storytime starts with these two on their property. Mind you, they are in BFE. There are no lights, no people, no nothing. They have a lot of property. They live in a really wooded area. They have a pond on their property. And something to note, she says in the very beginning, "I keep my lights on all throughout my house at all times." She also says, it's a bad habit. And I'm like, you know what, girl, it's your electricity bill, whatever. Set the scene. They're on their property. It is almost 10 o'clock at night. They're watching the news and they see something about UFOs. They say, you know what, I want to go outside and see if maybe I can see some UFOs. They walk out and lo and behold, they see something. They say they see two bright, illuminating balls in the sky. Stay tuned for the video. The way that she describes it, it sounds like they're kind of like dancing around each other and they're moving very quickly. One goes one way and then goes around and then shoots off. They grab their dog and they walk down their driveway to a dirt road. They notice that their pond, that usually has a lot of frogs, is silent. So they know, it's super weird because they're loud all the time. Ribbit, ribbit, loud as fuck. Nothing. They walk down the driveway to the dirt road with their dog, and as they hit the dirt road, they hear a humming, like a weird frequency type situation. Now, the way that they describe this frequency music, as they keep calling it, is someone taking a bunch of glass cups with different amounts of water in them and then going around it. You know what I'm saying? Like Miss Congeniality. You get it. Whenever they hear the humming, the dog bolts off into the woods. So at that point, they start freaking out. She said at the beginning, they felt really calm. They weren't super scared. But then she feels really weird all of a sudden. They call the dog back and they start walking back. She's like, "Hey, can I tell you something that's kind of freaking me out?" And she's like, "No." Valid response, because please don't. I'm already about to have a heart attack. She's visibly shaken, tears in her eyes as she's talking, and she really starts to tear up whenever she says, "I couldn't hold it in anymore. I said, we are not alone. I know that we're not alone." While they're walking back up to their house, they hear a humming from one side of the property go quiet on this side and go right to the other side. They hightail it back up to their house. They go in. She locks the front door, goes to lock the back door. And she says as soon as she flips off the light switch, the whole place goes dark, as if the power goes out. However, there are 2 lights that they have like near their computer or something like that. There are 2 Pokemon lights. And then she said something about maybe her stove light being on as well. So they still had power, but all the other lights went off. I know what you're thinking. Maybe a breaker blew. No, hear me out. They go to their room, they lock themselves in their room, and then she calls her sister. She says, you need to come get me right the fuck now, quick, fast, and in a hurry. The sister hangs up the phone and texts them and says, I don't know what's going on, but I don't hear anything but humming on your side of the phone. Now, if that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies, I don't know what will. And like as they're in their room, they hear a really eerie knock. Still freaking out. I mean, I would have been with Jesus at this point. As they're in the room, they're trying to calm down, positive affirmations, and they say, whatever this is that is with us does not have any power over us. So finally they open the door and they flip on a light switch and the light comes on. After the second time flipping the light switch on, she notices that this is even more creepy. That's telling us that the power didn't go out. Somehow all of these light switches were flipped off whenever she turned that light off. If you blow a breaker or your power goes out, the light switches don't move. So none of those explanations would make any sense for this. Now remember, I said in the very beginning, she mentions that she leaves her house lights on at all times, every single one of them, from one side to the other. I'm gonna go ahead and play the video that they got of those little orbs. Hi. Come on. I got it real close. Just tell them to go outside and look at the sky. They're gonna see the same sky we're seeing. Now, I want to hear y'all's opinions in the comments because there were several differing opinions in their comment section. Some people were saying that what we're hearing were frogs. Now, I have grew up around frogs. I live in BFE. So that's literally, I could walk outside and find one right now. That is not what frogs sound like. So I don't know what the fuck that was, but that was indeed not a frog, in my opinion. Some of the theories on what those orb things were, I believe it was called a plasmoid or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's big balls of plasma and they can like hold themselves together and they move, whatever. But in my opinion, with the humming and all of the things that happened, I just don't see that being a giant ball of plasma. That's just me. Now, I will say there wasn't anybody that I saw like discrediting her because she was visibly upset in the video. And they were like, well, listen, we believe you. This is definitely one of those situations. We could tell that you're really scared. So whatever happened, it happened. This is her handle. I will tag her in the caption. I want to know what your thoughts are. Drop an alien emoji in the comment section.
Want to hear something scary? This is part 2 in my Appalachian Storytime series. Let me start by saying I have lived in the Appalachian Mountains all my life and have experienced a lot of strange things. My family was Irish and settled in WV, but I currently live in the NC portion of these wonderful mountains. That being said, I have learned a lot about what really lurks in these dark woods, but this was like nothing I had ever experienced before. It all began with my golden retriever, Ozzy, growling like I had never heard. He literally never growls, so that already had me uncomfortable. But this growl was bone-chilling. It was like he was getting ready to have a fight for his life or something. I took both him and my other dog out around 11 p.m., and he would not leave my side. I noticed that my workshop door was open, so I walked down to close and lock it up. The entire time, he is glued to my side. Ozzy also kept trying to get in between my legs, still growling, and all of his hair sticking straight up like a feral animal. The second I close the door, all hell breaks loose in the woods. It sounded like 50 full-grown men had broken out into a full sprint, tearing through the woods. Trees were shaking and branches falling. In my life, I have never been that scared. We got back in the house before I shit my pants, and my pew-pew light, pew-pew mag light, to figure out what the hell was out there. When the dog and I got back outside, We were surrounded by what sounded like people mumbling. It was everywhere. I shined the light all over the woods and couldn't see anything, but the sound was coming from all angles. It sounded as if you got a gym full of people to baby mumble. Baby mumble. Maybe I'm being nitpicky, but you could just say babble. You could almost make out words, and that's why I don't think it was an animal. I almost immediately felt sick, like I was having a mix between a panic attack and the full swing of the flu. Back inside the house, it sounded like people were walking around all night. The windows were creaking, and you could clearly hear the sound of shoes on gravel. The mumbling never stopped. Every time I got up to check the house, my feet would touch the floor, and it would get dead silent. You couldn't hear birds, crickets, frogs, or anything. I was terrified and didn't sleep a wink. The air felt thick and evil all night. That's the only way I could explain the feeling. Imagine a soaking wet quilt being tossed over you. That's how I felt. I am looking for any answers as to what this could be. This wasn't like the normal spooky stories my grandma and great uncles used to tell me. So what do you think? Do you believe this story?
Names and locations have been changed to protect the deceased. This story comes from a viewer. She says she used to work nights at 11-1 Trauma Center in Georgia, and every once in a while, they would have somebody famous roll through those doors. This one particular night, she got a retired basketball legend. Now, she said that there has always been like some strange rumors surrounding this man. Throughout several times in his career, people would occasionally spot him with this weird-looking man standing next to him. He was a pale, elderly gentleman, and nobody really knew who he was. Some people said that he was a fashion designer. Others said that he was a business associate. But according to my viewer, she said it was something deeply unsettling about this man. She said every photograph she had ever seen of this man just looked wrong. He really never seemed to age, but his skin looked almost wax-like, and it wasn't young and it wasn't old. It looked ancient. Like somebody had taken a portrait of an 1800s person and just dropped him in modern day photographs. But this athlete was suffering from a catastrophic medical emergency. His condition was absolutely grim. By the time she had came on shift, his organs were already failing. He wasn't even heavily sedated, but he wasn't responding. No eye opening, no sporadic movement, nothing. And every time she walked into that room, she just felt like somebody else was in there with her. Do you want to hear some creepy stuff in these jewels? Buckle up, it's story time. She said it felt like somebody was watching, so much so that she just started to glance over her shoulder while she was charting. Hours passed and suddenly the monitors erupted. The patient started to cold. The room exploded with full motion. Other nurses rushed in. Respiratory arrived. The physician climbed on top of the stool to direct the whole code. And as the team worked, she kind of took a step back to make room. And that's when it happened. She noticed that in the window of the trauma bay, the reflection of the man that she recognized almost immediately. That man from the photographs over all of these years, but he wasn't really standing in the hallway and he wasn't in that room. It was like he only existed in the reflection. Watching, waiting. She said he smiled slowly and then he reached towards the patient's body, not the one on the bed, but like something above it. Something that was desperately trying to get away. And in one smooth, quick motion, he grabbed it. The viewer said it looked like he was pulling a person out of another person. The thing struggled, but that pale man did not. He simply just turned and began walking away, dragging whatever he came for right behind him into the darkness. And then just like that, with one blink, he was gone. A few seconds later, they called the time of death. The room fell silent. She says she doesn't know if it was exhaustion or stress, or maybe even if it was her imagination. But I say, maybe that man wasn't a fashion designer at all. And maybe some people travel through life with a collector that is already assigned to them. And when their time comes, the collector finally cashes in.
So you tell me, do you think that it was grief playing tricks on her eyes, or was she looking at someone who monitored the realm between both worlds? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and as always, have your best spooky day. Bye!
This first video was uploaded to YouTube back in 2009 by a man named Daniel Chaires. And in this video, we see a small local band playing in front of a crowd. The original video is about 4 minutes long, and it's not until the video is approaching the end that we see this thing in the background. Behind what looks like a screen, we can see a woman with a completely white face staring at the band. And it's rumored that upon watching this video back, the members of the band recognize this girl as one of their friends who had passed away. But in the moment, no member of the band and no member of the crowd noticed her. This next video was taken by a few friends around the year 2017. They were all hanging out one night and they decided to go explore some creepy, abandoned tunnels. Of course, nobody else was around, it was just them, and it was nearing midnight. And as they were walking through one of these tunnels, they kept hearing noises coming from the very end. One of the friends pulled out his phone and started to record and started to call out to whatever was at the end of the tunnel. And this is what he captured.
Hello? No.
There are a lot of mixed opinions on what was really staring back at them, so let me know what you think.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
This first video terrifies me, and it was uploaded to YouTube back in 2011 or 2012. It takes place in an area that looks a bit like an abandoned and rundown building. A man has decided to explore this area by himself, and he keeps hearing strange noises. So he proceeds to challenge whatever paranormal being is in there with him to show itself. And then we see this.
Algún espíritu, alma, demonio que se encuentra en este lugar, manifiéstate.
A lot of people believe that this looks like the spirit of a child or maybe even a duende, but let me know what you think. This next video was uploaded to YouTube on November 30th of 2010, and it takes place inside of a funeral home. And in the video, there's these two men filming a sort of vlog type video, and the person recording the video is talking about how they just finished burying someone, and they're talking about how sad it was. And all of a sudden, as they're having this conversation, something is seen in the background behind one of these men.
Pobre güey, drogadicto de su... ¡Ay, hijo de su puta madre! Pasó algo para acá, güey, para la puerta, neta, sin mamar, güey. ¡Ah, cabrón! No, cabrón, neta, pasó un cabrón. No, sí pasó un cabrón, güey. Lo acabo de ver ahí. ¡Ay, su puta madre!
So not only did they see this shadow or entity walking behind this man, the door also slammed completely shut afterwards. After this video was posted to their YouTube channel, nothing else was ever posted again, there was no update, and there was no further videos at all. So we'll likely never know if this video was fabricated or if it was genuinely a paranormal encounter caught on camera.
It's so hot in this office. I have no air conditioning. I'm sweaty, but we're going to talk about this scary video real quick because I want to know what's going on. It's been all over my FYP. There's two girls in this video. They are like hanging out at home. They're recording, being silly, trying to get up on a top bunk of a bunk bed. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but you're about to see it in just a second, but I want to talk about it first because I didn't even catch it in the beginning. It's very subtle, but down on the bottom, the little girl that's like trying to push the other girl up, when she says help, a hand comes up out of nowhere and like pushes on her shoulder. Now she swears, I will put her in the captions, she swears that there was no one else in the room, that they were just recording being silly, and that this actually happened. You watch it, you tell me what you think. So the video goes on for a little bit before this, but I just got to the main part, and yes, I put a sticker over her because I don't feel comfortable showing that, but yeah, there's that hand. Do you see it? Let's zoom in on it. There's the hand again. Yikes. That looks like an actual human hand to me. Yeah, I know. But she says no one was there. I believe her. Why wouldn't I? I mean, could she be lying to me? Yeah. Do I think she is? No. Because why would she post this so many years later? Apparently this was like way back in the day. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments.